What's going on, Ohio Cannabis Report family? It's your boy Gerald Moore Jr. coming to you guys with another episode of the Ohio Cannabis Report. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel as we will be coming to you with more content throughout the summer 2025 of all things Ohio cannabis. Also, we have some events coming up, so be sure to follow us on Instagram at Ohio Cannabis Report and also TikTok. I want to thank everybody for all the support that you guys have been giving us over the years as we've continued to grow this platform. Obviously, we've seen the need in terms of education, community development, economic development, workforce development, but also studying the history of cannabis, the medicinal benefits, and also having conversations and building up those communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs and the decades long fight against certain communities, Black and Brown communities, African American communities, Latinx and Latino communities. So, with no further ado, today we're just going to go over some headlines and some articles of things that have been going down in Ohio. Legislative wise, things have been slowing down due to summer break, but I will assume that things will pick up, quick as soon as fall and winter hits. So I'm going to keep you guys as informed as possible with as much information as I get from my sources, but also some of the things that I just researched and happen to look up and try to keep people abreast of what's going on in the state, but also nationally, because obviously cannabis is an issue that's bipartisan and it impacts a lot of people all over the globe, but especially in America, all over America. So today, first article is going to be Dayton Daily News. Bellbrook latest to propose a ban on adult marijuana facilities. Bellbrook City Council will vote on a full ban of recreational marijuana cultivators and sellers, the latest in a long line of Miami Valley municipalities to do so. So that's something to take note of. The ban comes as the city's moratorium on the same facilities is about to expire, originally put in place as state lawmakers were making changes to Ohio's recreational marijuana laws. We wanted to wait and see the final interpretations and rules were from the state. City manager Rob Schumer said earlier this year. The Dayton Daily News found that roughly 30 local cities and townships had placed bans or restrictions on adult recreational cannabis sales, including Bellbrook. Bellbrook is primarily residential with limited retail spaces, Schumer said. We want to make sure those stay open for those types of industries that serve the main needs of our community. Cannabis is a main need for the community. Ohio voters approved state issue 2 in November 2023, legalizing recreational use of marijuana statewide. Ohio lawmakers can change the law since it was passed as a citizens initiative rather than a constitutional amendment. The Ohio House and Senate stalled out prior to legislators' summer break on amending the state's marijuana laws. London Bishop. So yeah, I think it's important, one, that we continue to educate folks. Obviously, we're still using the word marijuana when we should be using the word cannabis when it refers to the plant. But also, you still have cities like this in Ohio that are having moratoriums against cannabis. So let me know what you guys think. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. You know what I mean? Whatever you guys want to hear from the channel. Obviously, there's a lot going on. I'm trying not to get banned. I get banned or shadow banned from like every platform because I'll be doing too much. But I'm just trying to get the information out to the people, man. Cannabis is one of those things that I'm very passionate about. I believe cannabis has done a lot for me in my life and my journey. And I just want other people to be able to experience it. I also think that it'll help our society out a lot more. You know what I mean? Getting people off of opioids and drugs and alcohol and allowing people to relax. A lot of people are so anxious and tense and stressed and depressed and dealing with so much Cannabis is one of those things that can really help ease folks' pain, folks' tension, folks' anxiety. Like even when life is still crazy, you know what I mean? Cannabis is one of those things that really can help put things into perspective for a lot of people. Uh, People that are dealing with chronic pain, chronic illnesses, cancer, and then it's all generations too. And so I think we just need to get to more of a common ground. Obviously, a lot of people have their issues with combustion or the smell of cannabis, or they see like rap music or rap videos and they see a lot of weed. And then again, it's an embellishment. A lot of times, like people can't read between the tea leaves, right? What's entertainment? What's real life? You know what I mean? So it's part of the education. But again, a lot of it also comes down to the stigma. A lot of things come down to lack of education. A lot of things come down to lack of resources. So it's important that we have conversations openly and have dialogue because, again, as we continue to move the goalpost forward or the goal line forward, as we the hemp bill that opened the floodgates for a lot of stuff. So we need to be teaching our next generation. You know what I mean? My kids are learning about cannabis. Like they understand that cannabis is daddy's medicine. Cannabis is a flower, right? The female flower is what produces the buds in the plants, terpenes. I teach my kids about CBD. My wife is taking some CBD and THC for rest. So there's a lot of different benefits. You know what I mean? A lot of people just assume like, oh, you're on cannabis, you're lazy, you're on cannabis, you're stupid, or you're out of control. Like I'm on cannabis right now. You know what I mean? And I'm producing literally educational and informational content. While I'm saying that, I am not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a coach. I am just a human being sharing my lived experience and sharing articles and resources to the community from my perspective. So I'm not a journalist. My wife is a journalist. I am not. I do believe in citizen journalism. I believe that as citizens, we all have the right, especially since we all have these things called cell phones and computers. We can all exercise our freedom of press and freedom of speech. So the sooner we all realize and learn that, I think the more powerful we become. I learned it watching my wife. I was like, oh shit, like I can't do what she does, but I mean, I can definitely do research. I could definitely come up with like thoughts and opinions on said subjects. I could research, right? I like to speak though. All right, so here we go. Local city looking to ban. Oh, that's the same. Similar article. Solon's first cannabis dispensary to open soon, with drive-through coming next. Solon, I believe, is a suburb of Cleveland. Solon is getting a new kind of green business this July. Its very first cannabis dispensary, The Botanist, located at 33113 Aurora Road, is preparing to open its doors pending final approval from the Ohio Division of Cannabis Control. Kate Oles, Executive Vice President of Revenue for The Botanist, said they are hopeful that approval will come this week. Once open, the dispensary will serve both medical marijuana patients and adult use customers. The company also plans to launch a drive-thru soon after opening, giving shoppers a convenient and discreet way to pick up orders without leaving the car. The dispensary's opening comes as Solon officials consider new zoning regulations that would limit how close marijuana dispensaries and vape shops can be to each other. The proposed changes aim to prevent overconcentration, promote public health, and reduce youth exposure to cannabis and vape marketing. A text amendment to the zoning code was set to be discussed at the June 24th Planning Commission meeting. If approved, it would still require city council approval before taking effect. The Botanist Solon is our first dispensary in the city, a thoughtfully repurposed space completely reimagined for today's cannabis customer. Oles said. This location also features one of Northeast Ohio's first cannabis drive-thrus, launching shortly after opening and is designed to serve both medical and adult use guests with convenience, professionalism, and care. City leaders have also weighed in on the arrival of Solon's first cannabis dispensary. Solon Mayor Edward Croce emphasized that while cannabis may be a new industry for the city, it is fully legal and regulated one. We are a large business city and we welcome all of our nearly 900 businesses, he said. This is a state regulated business governed by Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 3780, entitled Adult Use Cannabis Control. The Ohio Code section was enacted after Issue 2 passed in the state of Ohio. The store will open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. It sits just down the street from the district's Solon's mixed-use development project, expected to bring apartments, retail, office space, and a hotel by 2026. According to Oles, the botanist chose Solon because the city offers a mixed, strong community engagement and limited access to legal cannabis options. Solon is a thriving, highly engaged suburb with a population that values quality, service, and convenience. It also underserved when it comes to safe legal access to cannabis, she said. And they always use this like, no, bro, like all y'all weed is not safe, bro, and it's not the best. We saw a clear opportunity to fill the gap with our experience focused retail model. Customers visiting the store can expect a boutique style atmosphere with a calm professional vibe. The Botanist is designed to be accessible to everyone from seasoned cannabis users to those stepping into a dispensary for the first time. For the first time customers, we take guesswork out of cannabis shopping by offering clear product classifications, staff recommendations, and one on one support, Ole said. For returning guests, we offer express checkout and online ordering options to keep visits quick and easy. The upcoming drive-thru is expected to make the experience even more convenient. Shoppers will place orders online and select a drive-thru at the checkout, then arrive at the designated time for quick in-car pickup with no need to leave the vehicle, she said. Blah, 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 blah. So yeah, dispensary coming to Solon, Botanist. And again, man, I'm all for craft grow. I'm all for tier 3 growers. I'm all for the legacy growers. But we have to speak up, man. We can't allow these MSOs and these legal companies to take all the shine, right? Oh, we want to have this nice boutique. Like now weed is this boutique thing. And it's like, bro, like for the last 60 years, y'all been against weed. Now all of a sudden y'all making these high-end weed shops with Reggie weed, with mid weed. Like what's diabolical is like some of the shops is really nice, right? Like when you talk about the interior design, when you talk about how they done laid them out, they look really good. But the weed is mid, bruh. Like it's a couple good brands, but the weed overall is mid. You can't smell the weed, you can't see the weed. You know, so it's Ohio, bro. But again, these are the things if people get involved, especially now, we're still on the ground floor. It's still baby steps. You know what I mean? We need more people, especially people that have been in the game. Like if you're a grower, stop bitching on Instagram and social media and show up to the state house. You know what I mean? Like if you want to grow, get a lawyer and figure out how, you could get a part of this social equity program. But everybody, well, I'm gonna just grow illegally until I get caught. Oh, you ain't ever been caught trapping, so you don't know. Like, no, like I've never trapped weed, bro. Like, and I'm proud to say it. I was never a dope dealer. I smoked a lot of weed. I knew plenty of dope dealers, but I was not dealing no dope, you know, in terms of that. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. Like, I never wanted to have that shit over my head and just be looking over my shoulder, whether it's the police, the feds, or somebody trying to rob me for some weed. Mm. NB border guards say they seized biggest shipment of suspected cannabis since 2015. All right, we got another article coming out of Cleveland. Historic record rendivorous space in Cleveland becomes cannabis dispensary. Cleveland, Ohio, a historic Cleveland building with deep ties to the city's musical heritage, is getting new life as a cannabis dispensary. Clutch Cannabis is opening the former record rendivorous space at 300 Prospect Avenue later this month. The building sits at the edge of East 4th Dining District and a few blocks from Public Square, Progressive Field, and Jack Casino. It has been renovated to honor its musical past while serving as a modern retail space for a breadth of cannabis products. Before this latest iteration, the storefront had been vacant for nearly 20 years. It's an amazing historical landmark, said Pete Nish, Vice President of Compliance and Communication for Clutch. Founded in 2020 in Akron, Clutch Cannabis has 3 open dispensaries. They are in Canton, Lorain, and Loudonville, Ohio. For those who have forgotten the energy that once filled the space and changed the rock and roll landscape in Cleveland and beyond, Record Rendivorous was opened to Leo Mintz in 1939 to sell used 78 RPM jukebox singles. In 50 years of operation, Mintz and his family formed significant industry relationships and pioneered innovations in music, retail, and early rock and roll era in the 1950s and 60s. The Central Ohio Poison Center reported 582 marijuana exposures to children under 6 in 2024. Children and pets accidentally ingesting marijuana have been on the rise since Ohio's recreational marijuana sales started nearly 1 year ago. The Central Ohio Poison Center reported 582 marijuana exposures to children under 6 in 2024 compared to 79 in 2019 and 11 back in 2015, said Natalie Ryan, director of Central Ohio Poison Center, which covers 64 of Ohio's 88 counties and receives more than 42,000 poison exposure calls annually. There's been a pretty significant increase in exposures in the age group since legalization, she said. It's odd for us to go a day without having a call about a kid getting into one of these products. As access to something increases, it's not surprising that the exposure increases with it. Ohio's passed citizens initiative law to legalize recreational marijuana in 2023 with 57% of the vote, and sales started in August 2024. Ohio medical marijuana sales started in 2019. Children who have ingested marijuana tend to be drowsy, sleepy, confused, and in some cases have trouble breathing. Ryan said, it can take hours after a child has consumed marijuana until symptoms appear. These kids have seizures sometimes as well, she said. We don't really have an antidote or anything that we can really reach for. A lot of care that they'll be going to receive when they go to the hospital is going to be direct monitoring. Although it's not common, there have been times, depending on the amount of marijuana ingested, where doctors have put a child on a ventilator for a day or two until the drugs get out of their system, Ryan said. She recommends parents keep their marijuana products out of sight and out of reach in lockboxes. We don't recommend using them in front of your children because children like to mimic what their parents do, she said. Don't store these products where they can be confused with other snacks. It's not just the youngest child who is seen as an uptick in marijuana exposure. Children's aged 6 to 12 had 192 marijuana exposures, and teenagers 13 to 19 had 254 in 2024, according to the Central Ohio Poison Center. In 2019, there were 20 exposures to children 16 or 6 to 12 years old and 119 to teenagers 13 to 19. Pets. Marijuana is listed as ninth most toxin for pets in Ohio, according to Pet Poison Helpline. Ooh, that was a lot. So yeah, man, make sure y'all keep y'all weed locked up and away from your kids, but also educate your kids on what it is, right? I think a lot of times, as parents, And in society, we try to separate so much from the children instead of just engaging with them and teaching them what it is, right? Like if I'm going to use this substance, and I know a lot of people, oh, don't be in my business. My children don't need to be worried about adult things. But cannabis is a medicine, right? And so it's not like alcohol, even though we treat it, we say legalize cannabis like alcohol. Cannabis is not the same thing. It doesn't produce the same results, but it is a plant. It is an herb. It is something that is sacred. It is something that folks are using to medicate. And so, just like you would tell a child if you're taking some ibuprofen or some Tylenol, not to take that, because if you take one too many, you can overdose. But also, you should be saying, no, I'm using cannabis to help me with my stress, with my anxiety, with my PTSD, with my pain, with my arthritis. And like they said, you shouldn't be using it in front of them in terms of smoking it and vaping, because obviously their lungs are still developing. But we have to start having these conversations with our children and our families. And what I'm learning is that many of us are not having these conversations. I know a lot of us are busy just working in society and on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. But it's important, it's vital that we have these conversations because our children need to know, they need to be informed. I would rather my children learn from me than get out into the world and have to learn, right? And so I think it's, important, and that's something that we need to really start to focus on. I know I talk to my children about it. My daughter actually just told me, she said, Daddy, why are you always talking about cannabis? And I said, baby, cannabis is something that's been around for thousands of years. Cannabis is something that we just really got the ability to really talk about it as freely as we're talking about it. And we're still being censored. People are still being imprisoned. People are still being stigmatized and treated in a certain type of way from a plant, from consuming a plant. So again, the goal should be to end the stigma. And if you're somebody that uses cannabis and you're able to be successful in life and parenting and career opportunities and health and wellness, you should be sharing that journey, right? You should be sharing how cannabis has impacted your life. You should be sharing how cannabis impacts your life in terms of your career and your lifestyle, and how cannabis helps you balance and manage the things that you do. And I think a lot of us are just so afraid and so fearful of like the judgment and critique and what people would think about us. And obviously, some people have jobs, right, that they're under contract as federal agents. So, I get it. Not everybody could be public about everything they do. Um, so it's a gift and a curse. Let's see. Marijuana is legal to the states. Kentucky legalized medical marijuana. Arrest warrants issued for 4 men connected to a VIP smoke shop raid after failing to appear in court. Is this Ohio? Um, Lebanon, Ohio. Let's see what they got.
Are connected to the investigation surrounding VIP smoke shops. So back in March, WLWT was there as the Warren County Drug Task Force searched the company's warehouse. You may remember this. Officials telling us they started investigating after parents and schools reported students that were buying inappropriate products at those VIP stores. Today, prosecutor Dave Fornshell announcing these 5 men were charged with trafficking marijuana and possession of criminal tools. They're all scheduled to be arraigned July 18th.
Got him. Got him. Yeah, and I mean, I don't condone selling cannabis products to underage kids, you know what I mean, or to children. And so there's been this push at the State House. Oh, hemp products shouldn't be at vape shops or smoke shops. And I'm like, no, I think that's fine, but the people that run these businesses should be held accountable for not taking ID, right? As much as it annoys me sometimes, it doesn't annoy me because I like the fact that I still look young enough to get carded. But it's nothing for me to hand over my license for them to scan my license. And most of these places have the scanner now. So to be selling product to minors, um, you deserve to get, put in jail, because kids should not be having access to these products unless they are medically um, getting medical grade cannabis for, seizures or something. But yeah, let me know what y'all got. Let me know what y'all think, man, so far. Some of these articles. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna do a couple more articles and I'm gonna get out of y'all here. It's been 30 minutes. Let's see. I don't even know. That's PA. But PA borders Ohio. So PA, Kentucky. Marijuana. Mifflinburg man faces charges in custody drug case involving young girl. Is this Ohio? I don't even know. I ain't never heard of Mifflinburg. That's the thing. Ohio's such a big state, bro. Like, there's so much wild shit going on. It'd be so much wild stuff. Which Summit County city banned medical and recreational marijuana businesses? Oh, we just read that article. Judge denies brain exam for driver accused in fatal Marion County migrant bus crash. Olmsted County opens cannabis mezzo business registration applications. Ohio football preview, Northern Buckeyes, cannabis retailers navigating regulatory landscape ahead of debut. Why is Ohio is seeing more summer downpours than usual? My marijuana moment at? Marijuana moment. That was weird. Let's see. Senator Advance bill continues medical marijuana protections and amending House proposal to block rescheduling. Senate sets initial vote on Trump's pick to lead DEA next week as marijuana rescheduling sits in limbo. Czech Republic president signs bill to legalize marijuana home cultivation and allow psilocybin for medical use. Current roadside tests for marijuana impairment are pseudoscientific, law professor says. Let's go to talk to that one. Roadside tests for marijuana impairment that are widely used by police departments across the U.S. are inadequate, according to a newly published commentary by Rutgers University law professor who is urging policymakers to take a more scientifically robust approach to transportation safety while relying less on law enforcement's ostensible expertise. The paper by William J. McNichol, a Rutgers University Camden School of Law, asserts that current approaches to detecting cannabis impairment either merely imitates tools used to identify alcohol-based impairment without taking into account important differences between the effects of these molecules, or they are pseudoscientific police science. The substance use science community must take a lead in formulating an informed marijuana impairment detection policy, McNichol writes, rather than leave this to the hands of law enforcement. As more jurisdictions legalize and regulate marijuana, the paper says minimizing potential harm depends on being able to promptly, accurately, and objectively identify dangerous marijuana-based impairment on the highway and in the workplace, McNichol argues. Existing tools for making this on-the-spot medico-legal determination are inadequate, owing in large part to their lack of scientific rigor. Unlike what he describes as a scientifically validated close correlation between blood alcohol concentration and fatal vehicle accidents, tests for the presence of cannabinoids in their metabolites don't provide a clear indication that someone is behaviorally impaired. The science is fairly clear that the presence per se of cannabinoids in the bodily fluids provides little, if any, information concerning behavioral impairment, the article says, citing past research. Even if there was a well-demonstrated correlation between impairment and a scientific concentration of cannabinoids in bodily fluids, it adds the analytical chemistry required to reliably quantify cannabinoids in body fluids is difficult to execute in the field. Police departments have been reported to have given up on it, even after expending significant resources on the attempt. Another approach to identify impairment is the use of so-called drug recognition experts, DREs, a workplace impairment recognition experts, WIREs. Both DREs and WIREs claim that their expert opinions on the question of impairment are objective, reliable, and grounded in science, McNichol writes, even though the procedures they use were never designed to detect impairment and do not do so. The use of DREs, which originated at the Los Angeles Police Department, is very popular among police officers and prosecutors, he notes. It is a classic example of police science, techniques developed by police officers for use in their police work. That is to say, it is not science-based at all, but is merely a police officer's lay opinion encrusted with some of the trappings, but little or none of the substance of science. For example, DRE protocols typically call for investigators to check to see whether a subject's muscles feel normal, rigid, or flaccid. The paper says even though healthcare professionals do not measure muscle tone this way and would not recognize a police officer's roadside squeezes as a valid method of measuring muscle tone. Other signs of impairment, according to DRE training, includes a high heart rate and elevated blood pressure, McNichol points out, even though about half of the U.S. adult population has high blood pressure when completely sober, to say nothing of the effect on one's blood pressure or having a police officer measure it on the roadside or in a police station after an accident. Setting that 2009 to the Kentucky Supreme Court recognized can fully account for elevated blood pressure. The lack of scientific rigor in the DRE's protocol, the paper says, inevitably leads to inconsistent, almost random results. In a 1998 controlled lab study, it adds the DRE protocol produced either false negative or false positive results 45.5% of the time, not much better than the coin toss. The solution to the problem, McNichol suggests, is simple, though not necessarily easy to achieve. We must actually do what, so far, we have only pretended to do, he writes. We must develop and adopt a scientifically valid, objective and reliable method for detection of marijuana-based impairment that can be practically implemented in the field. A law professor, McNichol, does not dig deep into alternative roadside tests for cannabis use, but he calls for the development of new psychomotor tests, as well as further studies into potential biochemical markers of impairment, including a full range of natural and synthetic cannabinoids, as well as their metabolites. Most importantly, leadership of the legal and public policy discussions is the area must not be left in the hands of police officers and their associations, as is now the case, he writes. The substance use science community must take the lead, not only in the basic research that provides the foundation for the sound laws and policy, but also in the legal and policy discussions that will establish those sound policies. These lawyers, boy. The new editorial from McNichol, initially published online late last year, appears in the current issue of the Journal of Studies of Alcohol and Drugs. In the same issue appear from the Center of Medical Cannabis Research at the University of California at San Diego, similarly calls for disinterested experts to guide development of new approaches. Developing more robust tools to identify cannabis impaired drivers in an unbiased fashion is essential to keeping our roadways safe, the UC San Diego author said. There's another wrinkle to the cannabis testing debate. Recently acknowledged by the U.S. Department of Justice (DOJ) researcher. It's unclear whether a person's THC levels are even a reliable indicator of impairment. On a podcast last year, France Scott, a physical scientist at the National Institute of Justice (NIJ) Office of Investigative and Forensic Science under the DOJ, questioned the efficacy of settings per se THC limits for driving. Ultimately, she said there may not be a way to assess impairment from THC levels, as law enforcement does for alcohol. One complication in that if you have chronic users versus infrequent users, they have very different concentrations correlated to different effects, Scott said. So the same effect level, if you will be correlated with a very different concentration of THC in the blood of a chronic user versus an infrequent user. Last October, a study preprint posted on the Lancet by the 8-author team represented Canada's Center of Addiction and Mental Health, Health Canada, and Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, identified and assessed a dozen peer-reviewed studies measuring the strength of the linear relationship between driving outcomes and blood THC, published through September 2023. The consensus is that there is no linear relationship of blood THC to drive, and paper concluded. This is surprising given the blood THC is used to detect the cannabis impaired driving. Most states where cannabis is legal measure THC intoxication by whether or not someone's blood THC levels are below the certain cutoff. The study finds suggest that relying on blood level alone may not accurately reflect whether someone's driving is impaired. Of the 12 papers included in the present review, authors wrote, 10 found no correlation between blood THC and any measure of driving, including standard deviation of lateral position, speed, car following, reaction time, or overall driving performance. The 2 papers that did find a significant association were from the same study and found significant relationship with the blood THC and SDLP, speed, and following distance. The issue was also examined in a federally funded study last year that identified 2 different methods of more accurately tested for recent THC use that accounts for the fact that the metabolites of the cannabinoids can stay present in a person's system for weeks or months after consumption. A 2023 congressional report from the Transportation, Housing and Urban Development and Related Agencies, THUD, bill said that the House Appropriations Committee continues to support the development of objective standard to measure marijuana impairment and a related field sobriety test to ensure highway safety. A year later, Senator John Hickenlooper, Democrat from Colorado, sent a letter to the Department of Transportation, DOT, seeking an update on the status of a federal report into research barriers that are inhibiting the development of a standardized test for marijuana impairment on the roads. The department was required to complete a report under a large-scale infrastructure bill signed by President Joe Biden, but it missed the reporting deadline. Meanwhile, National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, last year warned that marijuana rescheduling could create a blind spot with respect to drug testing of federally regulated workers in safety-sensitive positions, despite assurance from the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, that the cannabis rescheduling proposal would not alter the federal drug testing requirements. At a House committee hearing, Buttigieg had referenced concerns from an ATA about the broad public health and safety consequences of reclassification on a national highway system and its users, which the Trucking Association voiced in a letter to the secretary. As more states legalize marijuana, a federal report published last year showed that the number of positive drug tests among commercial drivers fell in 2023 compared to the year before, dropping from 57,597 in 2022 to 54,464 in the prior year. At the same time, however, the number of drivers who refused to be screened at all also increased by 39%. Another question found that 65.4% of motor carriers believe current marijuana testing procedures should be replaced with methods that measure active impairment. At the time, the report from the American Transportation Research Institute noted 65,000 drivers deficit in the country and said the fear of positives over marijuana metabolites, which can remain in a person's blood far longer after active impairment, may be keeping would-be drivers out of the industry. The record high number of refusals came as the transportation industry faces a nationwide shortage of drivers, which some trade groups have said has only been made worse by drug testing policies that risk flagging drivers even when they are not impaired on the job. Current federal law mandates that commercial drivers abstain from cannabis, subjecting them to various forms of drug screenings from pre-employment to randomized testing. In June 2022, meanwhile, the ATRI survey of licensed U.S. truck drivers found that 72.4% supported loosening cannabis laws and testing policies. Another 66.5% said that marijuana should be federally legalized. Cannabis reform advocates, meanwhile, have also called on the federal officials to change what they call discriminatory drug testing practices around the trucking industry. A top Wells Fargo analyst said in 2022 that there is one main reason for rising costs and worker shortages in the transportation sector: federal marijuana criminalization and resulting drug test mandates that persist even as more states enact legalization. Then Rep. Earl Blumenauer sent a letter to the head of the DOT in 2022, emphasizing that the agency's policies on drug testing truckers and other commercial drivers for marijuana are unnecessarily costing people their jobs and contributing to the supply chain issues. And the 2022 ATRI report noted that research into the impact of cannabis use on driving and highway safety is currently mixed, complicating rulemaking to address the issue. A separate 2019 report from the Congressional Research Service, CRS, similarly found that evidence about cannabis ability to impair driving is inconclusive. The study published in 2019 concluded that those who drive the legal THC limit, which is typically between 2 to 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood, were not statistically more likely to be involved in an accident compared to people who haven't used marijuana. Separately, the Congressional Research Service in 2019 determined that while marijuana consumption can affect a person's response time and motor performance, studies of the impact of marijuana consumption on a driver's risk of being involved in a crash have produced conflicting results, with some studies finding little or no increased risk of a crash from marijuana usage. Another study from 2022 found that smoking CBD-rich marijuana had no significant impact on driving ability, despite the fact that all study participants exceeded the per se limit for THC in their blood. Even as far back as 2015, the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration concluded that it's difficult to establish a relationship between a person's THC blood or plasma concentration and performance impairing effects, adding that it is advisable to try to predict effects based on blood THC concentration alone. In a separate report last year, NHTSA said there relatively little research backing the idea that THC concentration in the blood can be used to determine impairment, again, calling into question laws in several states that set per se limits for cannabinoid metabolites. Several states have determined legal per se definitions of cannabis impairment, but relatively little research supports their relationship to crash risk. That report said, unlike the research consensus that establishes a clear correlation between blood alcohol content and crash risk, drug concentration in blood does not correlate to driving impairment. Wow. Well, that was a mouthful. Pause. So yeah, make sure y'all go ahead and subscribe on the Ohio Cannabis Report channel for me. Make sure y'all like this video. Make sure y'all comment. Let me know what y'all think of all the articles that I covered. You know, again, Ohio is a legal state. We have a medical and recreational cannabis here in Ohio. We have about 100 plus dispensaries. We also have home grow. So home grow is legal, up to 12 plants. 6 plants per adult. They can't prosecute you, and I think until it's over 23 plants. We still don't have lounges. We have public consumption, so you can publicly consume. Let me see. They just upped how much you can purchase from the dispensary, so you could purchase a good little amount from the dispensary. But again, like the dispensary weed here isn't the best. The craft grow is the best weed. So shout out to all the legacy growers. Shout out to all the home growers. Shout out to all the educators, community activists. Shout out to all the politicians that have been helping us out and are on the good side of history. Um, and yeah, man, make sure you guys continue to support Ohio Cannabis Report. I appreciate all the love. Um, we're gonna keep going, man. We're gonna keep going. So thank y'all for showing love. Peace.